Hi, everyone. Welcome. I played that song because, of course, if you took a look at the title beforehand, because, of course, that song culminates in the Malach HaMavet, the angel of death. It's like one of those house that Jack built songs, Chad Gadya, where like the mouse and the cat eats the mouse, and then it's like bigger and bigger things. But like, unlike the house that Jack built, all of a sudden there's the angel of death appears, right? That angel of death comes, and that's not good. The angel of death kills everything else. But don't worry, Jewish theology is intact, because in the end, the Holy One comes and slaughters the angel of death. And it's like, wow, God kills death. So the angel of death, even in our kind of folksy theology, is still subservient to God. But there he is, the angel of death. The angel of death. Where did that guy come from? And it's there in Chad Gadya, which is a very folksy kind of piece of Jewish tradition, right? So we do have some sense that there is an angel of death in this tradition, a grim reaper, if you will. But it doesn't feel totally like core to Jewish theology. It doesn't seem like it's not in the Torah, right? The rabbis start talking about the angel of death, and you wonder, how seriously do they expect us to take it? And when it's in a song like this, it feels almost like a cartoon. On the other hand, I will say that as fate would have it, I just came from my first in-person shiva. I visited someone whose mother passed away very suddenly. Someone in our community, Justin Schwartz, and he really had the sense that this is too soon. Like, this was not expected. This happened suddenly, and I didn't use the angel of death image with him, but it is like a kind of a symbol of the idea that it could happen at any time, and who knows when the angel of death arrives and knocks on your door. So it's a powerful symbol. How it fits it, how seriously we are to take this symbol is a question, and where exactly it emerges in our tradition, in our literature, we're going to find out a little bit about today. So with all of the kind of the lightheartedness of the folksy nature of it, but also the gravity of what it represents and what it's holding in our collective consciousness, let's head in, and we'll dedicate our learning today to the elevation of Justin's mother's soul, Sandra Schwartz. Let's say a blessing for our Torah study today. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to dive straight in. We're going to look at a couple of places where the angel of death shows up in this week's Torah portion, but it's not really in the Torah portion. It's in the commentary of Rashi. The angel of death shows up twice this week in Rashi's commentary, and we're going to spend time looking at that figure and how exactly he pops up, but also wonder, what is Rashi doing? What is Rashi up to in playing around with this imagery? Where does Rashi get it from? So let's dive in. We're this week reading Parshat Korach. Parshat Korach is about the great mutiny that Korach and his Edato, his band, bring upon Moses and Aaron, and they challenge Moses's authority. And then there's a test. Moses actually proposes this test that Aaron and Korach will put out their fire pans, and whoever God responds to with fire, accepts the offering. That's the real legitimate heir to the priesthood, to the leadership, and Korach does not pass the test, right? Or we'd be celebrating a different religion today. And famously, the big scene in our Torah portion is that Korach, the earth opens up under Korach and swallows him and his whole band. right? So, like we haven't seen the miraculous in this way since the plagues. This is a big deal. The earth opens up and swallows Korra famously, and that's the climax of the story. But it's not the end of the story, nor is it even the end of the chaos and the violence and the death. Because, and here I'll provide you with a source sheet there in the chat, because the place we're going to pick up is just after Korah has gotten swallowed up by the ground. Just after that. And the drama will continue, because even though the power of God has been showed and the choices God have been showed, the people are actually not happy about the way things went down. The people are not pleased that Korach was just disappeared, just swallowed up by the earth. And it makes you wonder whether the people weren't a little more on Korach's side than Moses's to begin with. Okay, so let's head in. That's where we're at in the story. And soon enough, we're going to get to the angel of death. Hold on, this is not the right. There we are. Okay, so here we are. We're picking up the next day, meaning Korach was swallowed by the ground yesterday. Okay, the next day, Mimacharat, the whole Israelite community railed against Moses and Aaron, saying, "You two have brought death upon the people of the Eternal." You two, Moses and Aaron, have brought death upon the people of the Eternal. So there's the theme of death. But as the community gathered against them, Moses and Aaron turned toward the tent of meeting. The cloud had covered it, and the presence of the Eternal appeared. Right? So the people are getting angry, complaining, approaching Moses and Aaron. And then Moses and Aaron, the scene here is kind of interesting. They turn around and God's a-coming. God is heading down. They didn't summon. God's presence is coming down over the tent of meeting. And so Moses and Aaron go to the tent of meeting. That particular sequence is interesting, because it's not like they go to consult God and God comes down. No, God's already coming down. God and Moses and Aaron have to scurry over to the tent to see what God is thinking. And here's what God is thinking. The Eternal spoke to Moses, saying, "Remove yourselves from this community, that I may annihilate them in an instant." Whoa. Move yourselves from this community, meaning the word here is Edah, congregation. So is it the community that supported Korach, or is it everyone? Not so clear, but remove yourselves from them and I will annihilate them in an instant. In other words, God's pissed. God's done this great display, this great miracle, seemingly proof enough that God knows what God wants, and God has picked Moses and Aaron and not Korach. And now the people are complaining about it. God can't take it anymore, and he's just, God, as you know, God flies off the handle quite a bit, and so God is angry and says, "Move away! I'm going to achale. I'm going to consume completely." Okay. Now, this next verse is the one that we're eventually going to jump over to Rashi on. So let's listen to this next verse and ask ourselves, is there anything strange about this verse that we will need to go look up a commentary for? Okay, so the next verse is, then Moses said to Aaron, right? So God says, remove yourselves from this community, and I may annihilate them from the instant. Oh, and I didn't finish. Interesting end to this verse. Aaron and Moses immediately fall on their faces. And that's a sign of kind of shock, panic, and total submission. In other words, God's going to kill everyone, and Moses and Aaron just throw themselves to the floor, like, whoa, 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 not yet, whoa. And here's what Moses proposes. Then Moses said to Aaron, take the fire pan and put on it fire from the altar, same fire pan you just used. Add incense and take it quickly to the community and make expiation for them, make atonement for them. Make atonement for them. I usually retranslate that as atonement, because what's expiation? Atonement. Make atonement for them. For wrath has gone forth from the Eternal. Wrath has gone forth from the Eternal. And the word here is haketzeth. So it's almost like the wrath, the great wrath. Wrath has gone forth from the eternal. The plague has begun. So the plague has begun. So God is bringing a kind of killing force into the congregation. Note the way that God's anger and a plague are almost spoken of as the same idea. Like God's anger is a way of describing terrible things. Okay. And then we'll just a couple more verses. So this is what happens. Aaron took it very dramatically as Moses had ordered. God's coming down to kill the people here. Moses has a solution, and then Aaron takes a fire pan as Moses had ordered and ran to the midst of the congregation where the plague had begun among the people. He put on the incense and made atonement for the people. And then, very, very powerful last line here. He stood between the dead and the living until the plague was checked. V'yamod ben hametim uven hachayim v'te'atzar hamagefa. Okay, so that's powerful image, and the plague was checked, but not before it killed a large number of people. Now, that's our setting, that's our scene. Here's where we're gonna dive in and soon meet the angel of death. We're going to look at the Rashi on this verse. Then Moses said to Aaron, take the fire pan and put it on the fire from the altar, add incense and take it quickly to the community and make atonement for them. For wrath has gone forth from the eternal. The plague has begun. Okay, what's bothering Rashi? In other words, what do we think is Rashi is going to feel like, well, that's not clear. I need to explain that. There's something about the verse that Rashi is going to jump in and say, let me help with that, because there is something here that's perplexing. So let's see if we can figure out what it is. Matt, anyone take first crack at it?
The wrath seems to be a thing, a being. I can tell that's where you're going with this. That Good. The wrath is a something in and of itself. It's not a description of God.
Great. Okay, that's a great question. And that is something that Rashi is going to discuss. What else? Anyone else?
I know what my problem is.
What's your problem? Love to hear it, Matt. What's your problem?
My issue is that it seems that that the fire actually stops. We think of sacrifice and stuff as, hey, God, listen to me. I'm doing some stuff. I hope you like this. When this is actually a thing that prevents it. This is an antibiotic, not a request.
Good. Okay. Now you're getting closer to where we're headed, Matt. Okay. Matt's exactly right. That's part of the problem or not problem, but part of the curiosity here is that Moses steps in and cooks up a dish that prevents the plague.
Yeah.
Now, just finish the thought. What's the question there? Moses cooks up a plague-preventing dish.
How does that stop? How could that stop God is the question.
That's one answer to the question. I'm just going to now we're almost there, so I'm going to speak it out. Matt, thank you for taking us most of the way there. The next question I might ask is, where did Moses get this information? How does Moses know how to make plague-stopping fire? Right? There's a formula here, right? God says, I'm going to kill everyone now. And Moses says, quick, get the fire pans. How does Moses know that? Where did Moses get that? So great that they had a plan they could spring into action, but where did it come from? Okay, so that's going to be the question that's bothering Rashi. So let's take a look at what Rashi says. And here we will encounter for the first time, Malach HaMavet, the angel of death. Okay. Okay, here we are. Rashi says to make atonement for them, right? He put on the incense and made atonement for the people. Go quickly to the community and make atonement for them. Make atonement for them. This secret, razeh, this is another word for secret, raz. This secret, the angel of death, Malach HaMavet, communicated to him, Moses, when he went up onto heaven to receive the Torah. Okay, so that's the beginning of an answer, though, goodness, it only raises more questions. But the idea is Moses got this secret information for how to stop a plague from the angel of death when he was up there on Mount Sinai. right? And he heard from the angel of death that the incense holds back the plague. Shakatoret otzer hamagefa. And we learn this from the Talmud in Tractate Shabbat. Okay, so that's the answer to the question, where did Moses get this? Is that when Moses went up to Mount Sinai, the angel passed him a secret on how to prevent a plague. Now let's just stop there for a minute. This is a very funny image of the angel of death, that the angel of death is working with Moses to help Moses prevent death. Sort of the opposite of the role that we associate with the angel of death. Okay, so what is going on here? How can we say that the angel of death just sort of pops up on Mount Sinai? Okay, so we're going to get the backstory soon, but I see already some thoughts. So let me just, without a question, turn to the crowd of learners. Wayne.
So I wonder whether the incense is really the important thing here, the what, as opposed to just the action, that Moses did something. And instead of the incense having to really be something that's a plague buster, it was more that God wanted to see Moses do something.
Yeah, that's a great answer, Wayne. But that's an answer that is in some ways even better, because it doesn't resort to some secret formula, some message that had to be passed. Rashi's taking a different approach, right? I like Wayne's answer. Wayne's answer is God saw that Moses and Aaron are just trying something, and okay, you've convinced me. I'll hold back a little bit. But Rashi wants something more specific. Rashi wants to show how Moses knew exactly what to do, and the only entity that could know exactly how to stop death is, of course, the agent of death, right? This is the angel that brings death, so this is the angel who knows how to prevent it. Okay, so that's where we're headed. Maggie, you want to pick up on that?
Well, I'm wondering if he had this rapport with the angel of death because he prayed to God previously not to accept Korra's and their and the gang's offering.
Right.
So
right. Yes, that's good too.
Or he's calling death upon them. So was that a way to also bring about the solution to the death from the plague?
Okay, this is great. Maggie reminds us that there were fire pans we just had a big battle where there was a whole offerings, fire coming down, God shoot, there's a kind of a mechanism in place. It's actually not so surprising that Moses should choose this sort of ritual to put something to the test. In other words, there's plenty of material within that. Wayne came up with a very reasonable suggestion. Maggie's now giving us a little more to build on by digging back into our earlier story, which is all to say we could come up with better answers than this. What's the phrase? Deus ex machina, right? Why is Rashi pulling a rabbit out of the hat, right? It's like a sort of solution. Gotta find the angel of death to solve this problem. So I think just from our alternative interpretations, we can see that this is quite a reach, quite a pull. And this is part of why we're asking, why is Rashi bringing the angel of death into this? Okay, let's take one more comment, and then we're going to see where Rashi gets it from Hal.
Okay, what occurs to me is, the angel of death may have his own agenda here. He wants to be in charge of death. He doesn't want God to be in charge of death. And this is a way of sort of, I don't know, is he the fallen angel? I mean, is he the angel who gets kicked out? I don't know who he is, but it's possible, he just wants to maintain control over death at God's expense.
Okay, I love that. That's going to really help us now move forward. Hal's suggestion that we need to think about the angel of death and his own agenda. What's the angel of death up to here, especially if the angel of death is not providing death, but providing a remedy? Well, what's the angel of death doing? And I think Hal probably wonders right away if this isn't, who is this? Is this Satan? Is this Satan the figure Satan appears in the book of Job? The figure of the angel of death never appears in biblical literature, but maybe the rabbis are playing on images like that. And the Hasatan, the adversary, the Satan, is a little bit of a figure who's adversarial to God. So is the angel of death here also kind of trying to strike out on his own? Who is the angel of death? Okay, so that's great. So as Hal suggests to us, wait a minute, what is the agenda of the angel of death? It's a good time now to get a little bit of that backstory. And to do so, Rashi plucks, this is going to be a class where we appreciate the brilliance of Rashi, okay? Rashi plucks one line at the end of a long story in the Talmud that actually is so wonderful that we're going to read through it. It's not too long, don't worry, but we can't reference this story in the Talmud without seeing it in its fullness. And actually, some of you may have seen it or just even heard about it before, because it's a pretty famous story about Moses arguing with the angels over whether or not the Torah should have been given to lowly creatures like human beings. Does that sound familiar? Anyone remember that story, that midrash? If not, you're about to you're in for a treat, because this is one of the great midrashim about what happened on Mount Sinai. And I want, there's a deep meaning to this conversation that is all a lead up to this last line about the angel of death that Rashi's going to use. So it'll inform, I think, a lot of our discussion around what exactly the angel of death is doing. What's the angel of death's relationship to human beings? So let's take a look. We're now going to dive. This is, Rashi said, I got this from Masechet Shabbat, right? Rashi doesn't always say explicitly Kideita b'Masechet Shabbat as it is related in Treaty Shabbat. It's almost like Rashi is telling us, go look up the origin story, and that we will do. Okay, so this is it's just a really, really great story from the Talmud. Sure, we'll make it public. Okay, here we go. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said, when Moses ascended on high, that's Mount Sinai, the servant angels said before the Holy Blessed One, Master of the universe, what is one born of a woman doing here among us? Lilud isha beinenu, meaning, what is a human being doing here? Someone who came out of another human being. What is it? Through I think maybe the angels are also saying, like, through the icky process of birth and the human body, and as opposed to us, we just sort of exist, right? But okay, so here we go. So what do you do? How are you letting a human being up here? How are you letting this is our territory? God and the angels talking up here. The Holy One said to them, he came to receive the Torah. Okay, that we know. They said before the Holy One, are you kidding me, God? A hidden treasure that was concealed by you 974 generations before the creation of the world, and you seek to give it to flesh and blood? You kidding me here? The Torah, the Holy Torah, the blueprint for the world itself, and you're going to give it to just some dude? We're angels. You're just going to give it to a human being? Okay. So, and this is kind of fun. They just throw a couple of verses out from the Psalms that prove that this should not happen, as if to say, God, do you remember the book of Psalms? The book of Psalms says, what is man that you are mindful of him, and the son of man that you think of him? God, our Lord, how glorious is your name in all the earth, that your majesty is placed upon the heavens. I usually change this to human. Okay, so these verses are just meant to say, what is a human being? Human being is nothing. Meanwhile, your majesty is placed above the heavens, up here with us. Okay, just a couple of, this is classic Talmud. Even the angels are using Talmudic logic. Look at this verse, look at this verse. Okay, now here's where things get really interesting and beautiful. The Holy One said to Moses, well, good question. Why should you receive the Torah? provide them with an answer. Hechzir lahen tshuva, provide them with an answer. Moses said to the Holy One, Master of the universe, I'm afraid lest they burn me with the breath of their mouths. Angels are fire-breathing, they can annihilate me. I'm not gonna argue with them. I won't be able to survive. The Holy One said to him, hold on to my throne of glory and provide them with an answer. As it is stated, God causes him to grasp the front of the throne and spreads the cloud over it. And Rabbi Nachum said this teaches that God spread the radiance of the Shekhinah and the cloud over Moses. Okay, so basically God is saying, just hold on to my throne and nothing can hurt you. Okay, but still, I want you to answer them. It's kind of like a wild story here. So what does Moses say? Well, Moses springs into Talmudic logic himself. And Moses says, okay, Moses said, and I don't want to make God him, Master of the universe, the Torah that you were given me, what is written in it? And as if God is responding here, okay? It's like Moses sets God up as a kind of a an assistant in this rhetorical presentation. Master of the universe, the Torah that you were giving me, what is written in it? God responds, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt from the house of bondage. Then Moses turns to the angels and said, did you descend to Egypt? Were you enslaved to Pharaoh? Why should the Torah be yours? And then there's a lot of these. But it's such a, I could fast forward, but let's just read it because it's just such good stuff. Again, Moses asks, what else is written in it? You shall have no other gods before me. Turn to the angels. Do you dwell among the nations who worship idols? Do you need protection from idolatry? You who reside up here with God? Again, Moses asks, what else is written in it? Remember the Shabbat day to sanctify it. Do you perform labor that you require rest from? Again, Moses asks, what else is written in it? Do not swear by the name of the eternal your God in vain. Do you conduct business with one another that may lead you to swear needlessly? Again and again and again, Moses' argument, does the Torah apply to you at all, angels? Do you do anything that would require you to follow the Torah? And again, Moses asks, and this one in some ways is a retort to the one born of a woman. Moses is trying to kind of clap back here. Do you have a father or a mother? Or sorry, what else is written in it? Honor your father and mother. Do you have a father or a mother? Meaning you said, oh, I was born of a woman. Well, actually, that's one of the things that allows me to keep one of the 10 commandments, Mr. Angel, Mrs. Angel. So that doesn't work. Okay, and again, Moses asks, what else is written in it? You shall not murder, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not steal. Is there jealousy among you, or is there evil inclination within you? So you see the argument here. The argument is the Torah was written for human beings. It's for us. The laws are meant to regulate us. So yeah, it's the most precious thing in the world. And yeah, we're very lucky to get it. But just because you're spiritually elevated doesn't mean you get it. It's for human beings. That's what the Torah is for. Okay. And now that's the story. And now the angels, and here's where we get the angel of death. The angels are so impressed. Immediately, they changed their minds and agreed with the Holy Blessed One. As it is stated, God our Lord, how glorious is your name on all the earth. While that your majesty is placed above the heavens is not written. In other words, this is an aside, forget it. But like they find another verse that says, actually, no, it's not in heaven, it's on earth. Okay, fine. A little bit of a retort there to the earlier logic. But the point is, they were so impressed with Moses's argument that immediately each and every one of them, of the angels, became an admirer of Moses. Naselo ohev, they loved him. And they gave something to him. They each wanted to give him a tribute, a gift. As it said, there's a verse that sort of hints at that. The verse in Psalm says, you ascended on high and you took a captive. You took gifts for Adam, ba'adam, which could mean the name Adam, or could just mean humanity. And even among the rebellious also, that the Lord God might dwell there. That verse, the Talmud says, is you took these gifts, all of these gifts, because you are Adam. In other words, here's a rule, by the way. Let me just tell you a rule of learning stories in the Talmud. If you get you're reading a story and it's a cool story in the Talmud, and then they throw you a verse and it's a little confusing, like what are they doing with this verse? It's okay to move past it because the verse is a proof text. And sometimes to understand why the verse is a proof text, you can get a little, wait, what are they trying to say? So just as a matter of reading Talmud, when you're reading these stories and they throw out 5 verses, as it said, it's okay to say, well, if I don't get why that's a proof text, I'm going to go forward and keep reading the story. Okay, so just a word to the wise there. So we're going to go forward and just read the end of the story. Remember, now the angels are all giving Moses gifts, and even the angel of death gave him something, as it is said, and he placed the incense and he atoned for the people. And the verse said, and he stood between the dead and the living, and the plague was stopped. If the angel of death had not told him this remedy, how would he have known it? Right? And that's, I asked, what was Rashi's question? Rashi took his question directly from the Talmud. How did Moses know this? The angel of death told him. Dun, dun, dun. Now, was that a great story or what? Okay, but what's the point of the story? Let's start there. Let's just start like, let's try to start our analysis by thinking about this whole dialogue that Moses has with the angels. I in some ways I already said what the point of the story is. Torah is for humans, not for angels. Great. But what's the point of the second half of the story where the angels are so impressed? Wow, great reasoning. You're absolutely right that they agree with God that humans should have the Torah, and actually they want to give humans something too. And so they all give humans something. What is that? But why is that there? Why do we need the bit about the angels giving gifts? Anyone want to read the symbolism into that part of the story? Yeah, Wendy.
I think this is quite beautiful. I think as I was reading the story, that Moses is not just saying we need this Torah to regulate us, but it is why we are here. We are people of action. We are in the world of action. And angels, this is not their world. They're the spiritual world. And we are here on earth to do things, to learn, to take in Torah and constantly learn from it. This is a constant evolution, and that is a prize. This is what God has given us, is this life to create, to co-create with God. And that, I believe, that seems to, that's what this story says.
I love that. Here's what I love about what Wendy's set up for us, is that if the deepest message of this sugya, this section of the Talmud, is that we're supposed to be fixing things. We're supposed to be in process. The Torah is there to help us deal with our evil inclinations, our bad like actually the holiest thing is imperfection seeking perfection. That's tikkun, right? Angels are already there. It's not interesting, right? That's what's going, and that's the highest thing of all. That's why there's a Torah to begin with. That's why there's a creation to begin with, so that we can be, stumble and fall, and then, right, Adam, right, Eve, and then better ourselves, learn how to come back from that. And if that's true, then I'm just sort of, now I'm building off of Wendy's beautiful interpretation here, and I think it leads us to wonder if the angels also now suddenly want to help us grow, thrive, develop, become greater. And maybe the angel of death, if I may, is even saying like, oh, I'll help you become even more divine. Here's an antidote to death. You could really become divine. You become like one of us, right? So that's like, oh, that's a great way of conceiving of this whole narrative. Very, very beautiful. Let me turn to David Kurtz, and then Elizabeth, and then Joni.
I've often felt that God has never and can't enter his own creation, and everything is done through angels. It's funny in this Parsha, when there's so many moments where it feels like like Moses is having a dialogue with God in front of everybody, but they don't see him. It's like off stage somewhere. I'm reading some of this and I'm going, don't you people see that God's right here? And because Moses is talking to him, and it just feels. I think angels appreciate being seen, And as long and if you can see the angel, I mean, we're about to come on Baal Lem, where there's an angel and the only one sees is the donkey, that kind of thing. And angels appreciate being seen. And if they are seen and understood, you can gather great information from them as messengers of God.
Okay, this is really interesting. Let's not forget that angels, as David just said, are malachim, messengers of God. Fundamentally, the role of, and we've discussed this actually in this class before, the role of angels in the Torah is that they seem to be kind of sometimes almost physical, like you could see them, but some like emanations, manifestations of God, because after all, we can't really interact with God, right? Maybe Moses can, but basically not. And so everybody's got to have some kind of intermediary, and in that sense, the angel is like a kind of relatable form of godliness. And maybe also the angel is an extension of God's will. So that I think leads us to wonder whether the angel of death passing Moses this cure is also a form of God's will. God is both the plague that annihilates, but also the cure to the plague. That's also a manifestation of God. And the way that we make sense of all that is to assign them roles in this cosmic drama. But the angel is the role, says David, that is most there with us, relatable. Somehow we could actually imagine having a dialogue where we wrested this secret information from the angel. Okay, great.
But we have to be able to see him. We have to be able to see the angel.
Why does that feel important to you?
Because I think in it, again, getting back to what I was saying in the drama of off stage, I think Moses can see the angel. There are other instances where people can see the angel, and we're coming up on the one where the donkey can see the angel. You have to be able to see and all these kinds of things for it to manifest and for us to be able to learn from it.
Okay, yeah. Okay, I hear that. And after all, we're talking about like dealing in secret knowledge. Where did Moses get that secret knowledge? It's hard. You can't really, it's hard to suggest, well, Moses and God were just sort of chatting. Like once you're dealing in that kind of scenario, you have to have an actual interaction. So David suggests you have to have an actual character and a visible character at that. Okay, Elizabeth?
So even following up from what David just said, that you have to prove what you believe. This whole story starts with Korra saying, and his gang saying, we don't believe you are who you say you are, and why should we believe? And there's all this doubt. And then it ends with everybody, including the angels, giving him gifts and saying, yes, you are the mighty one. So I think there's a really nice circularity. It finishes the story. It comes from a moment of real doubt to a moment of total belief. And it's a nice arc. You know, if you were writing a script, this is the way it would end in Hollywood, you know?
Yeah, that's such a lovely description you just gave, because that's exactly right. After all, the story starts in a kind of challenge to the very notion that we have a Torah at all, that we are worth anything at all. We're worth less. We're nothing. And that's why I especially like the way he brings back I have a mother. Yeah, that's right. I was born from a woman, because that's what actually the thing that you thought our physicality, that's what makes us great, right? And so there's something about like, aha, like the sort of Talmudic triumph of Moses that the angels just have to say, whoa, you really do deserve this. Well done. And more, right? That's very nice. Yeah, just as a story arc, it's beautiful in that way. Joni?
And just to continue it, I'm wondering that their gift offering, I feel as though you people are smarter than we thought you were. And we want to make sure that we are allies. There's, it's come from a disconnection. There's Moshe, there's God, there are the angels, and suddenly with Moses's rebuke, so brilliantly representing me, representing us, the angels are, including the angel of death, is for the first time, I think, taking the people seriously.
I love this,
you.
Joni. There's something very, very, very important, I think, about what Joni is offering us. It provides us a recurring kind of theological movement that we see in rabbinic literature, which is that there's God and there's human beings. And then, yes, as David was saying, there seems to be, even in the Torah, some kind of intermediary forces. And that, I think, that makes us insecure, like, oh, we're not the highest beings in creation. There are things that are higher than us, angels. And so the rabbi stories again and again show that, yeah, the angels think they're higher than us, but actually it turns out we're amazing and the angels want to serve us. And the angels realize, and God has been setting it up all along. And I think that's embedded in this story. I love human beings. That's my real relationship. That's really, so all of the anxiety, there's some anxiety about like, well, what about the beings in between God and us? No. They want to be our friends. They respect us. They look up. We are in some way the highest, the pinnacle of creation, even though, yeah, we're not angels, but still. Okay. All right. Let's take one more comment, and then I want to provide us with one more angel of death story. Hannah Jensen.
I'm just thinking about the fact that the angels as intermediaries get their messaging from God anyway. So the angel of death communicating these tricks of the trade or secrets or insights to Moses got that from God. That didn't come to this angel of death just from nowhere. And so I'm wondering about, what does it say about God's understanding of self? That maybe God already knew I'm not always going to be right. Because we see so many stories in this part of the Torah of God being angry, of God being vengeful in these ways that I think some of us find difficult. And just wondering about, does God understand something about, I'm going to trust this person to make some choices when I make the wrong one? That I need to make sure that he has access to this knowledge that in the moment I might not be able to give him because I'm going to be too angry and I'm going to be too impulsive and too reactive. But I want him to already know that there's a way out and that he has power, that there's this hierarchical relationship, but he has some power. And how can I give that to him in a backdoor way that then entrusts him with it, with this sacred understanding that hopefully he only uses when the time is right?
Okay, that's brilliant, just brilliant. And it helps us to step back a little bit and see some of the larger tensions in this story, right? Hannah's asking us to imagine that the angel can be a kind of a representation for some other desire that God has, because remember, the primary desire that God seems to be expressing in this story is, I'm gonna kill everybody. And that's disturbing, right? I mean, and it's not just us modern people where we don't like God being mean. No, the people in the story are disturbed by it. That's the way this starts. The people are like, God just swallows people up whenever there's a disagreement? Whoa, you just kill. And on the one hand, God's like, yeah, I'm God. How dare you challenge me? And that force of God is moving forward in this story, right? That's present. But on the other hand, there's a remedy. There's a cure. Now, where does Moses get a remedy from? Moses is tapped into God. That's the real story Hannah is telling us. And I think quite wisely, Moses has and that means that God, through Moses and through this system, also wants to give us relief, wants to provide us with an escape, wants to give us an out, wants to give us a way to do tshuva, wants to be kind, to be merciful, as well as this, hard driving God of rage. Okay, so that's very, very helpful. We'll return to that before we close, like what this says about God, or we'll keep it in mind. I want to now take us to another angel of death story. There are two angels of death that appear in our Parsha. I said they both appear in Rashi's commentary. They appear very, very close to one another, and yet they are two entirely different stories. So take a look here at what happened. We just saw a huge story from the Talmud, and in that story, the angel of death is actually playing the opposite role that we might have expected. The angel of death delivers the remedy to death. But if we go back now, let's take a look here and just remind ourselves here. Here, our piece of Talmud ends with, and he placed the incense and he atoned for the people. And then that line, that final line that was so striking, and Aaron stood between the dead and the living, and the plague was stopped. Now, if that's from this piece of Talmud, if I jump to that verse, Numbers 17:13, and he stood between the dead and the living, and the plague was stopped, Rashi's there again. And here, Rashi is asking a kind of a similar question. What do you mean? How did he stand between the dead and the living and stop the plague? What was he doing there? And here's the answer. Again, the angel of death here, but it's not from this story. It's from a totally different story. So take a look. He stood between the dead and the living. He, Aaron, seized the angel of death and stopped him by force. The angel said to him, "Let me be so that I can carry out my commission." Shlichut. God, in other words, God sent me here. I was sent here to do this. So let me go. Now, the angel of death is the killing force. Not the remedy, but the plague itself. Aaron answered him, "Moses has bidden me prevent you. Moses told me to stop you, and I'm going to stop you." And the angel replies, and it's exactly what the angel should say, "I'm the messenger of the omnipresent, whilst you are but the messenger of Moses." You kidding me? Moses told you to stop? I come from God. Who cares whether Moses said anything? I come from God. And Aaron says, no, Moses doesn't say anything of his own mind, but only at the command of the Almighty. If you don't believe me, behold, the holy blessed one and Moses are at the entrance of the appointed tent. Come with me and ask them. Okay, so a little confrontation here between the angel of death and Aaron. And Aaron's like, no. Moses's word is God's word, and if you don't believe me, let's go take it up with God and Moses. And this is the meaning of what is stated. And Aaron returned to Moses. In other words, Aaron brought the angel of death to Moses. So there's some language that they find in the story that they could reread this as Aaron returned to Moses, and Aaron dragged the angel back to Moses. And in fact, and I have to show you this, in the original story, remember, the other Rashi was drawn from the Talmud. This one is drawn from Midrash Tanchuma. This is like just some salacious Torah for your learning pleasure here. That in the original story, the angel of death said to Aaron, "Let me go so that I can complete my task." Aaron said, "Moses sent me. Both Moses and the Holy One are at the tent of testimony. Let's go to them." And the angel refused to go. And so Aaron seized him by his loins and dragged him in. As it is said, Aaron returned unto Moses. So like, that's like very vivid language, right? Like, that's the idea, is like, it's such a battle. Aaron reaches over and grabs him by the cojones, right? And, I'm going to show you. Okay, so the wildness of the Midrash, right? It's like, let's not forget how out there the rabbis were, right? This is our sacred tradition. But here's my real question as we come to the last section of our hour. My real question is, what is Rashi doing? That's so weird. Rashi found two angel of death stories, and they're totally different stories. In the first story, the angel of death wants to help us. And in the second story, the angel of death is the killing force itself, has to be stopped. Now, that's fine. For the rabbis to have two different stories about the angel of death, that's fine. But for Rashi to read one in and then the next one into the Torah, that's a problem. Like, who is this angel of death? The angel of death passed Moses the formula to stop death and then came down at God's behest to bring death? What's going on here? How is it that the angel of death is both the disease and the cure, both the killer and the savior? Like, what is Rashi trying to construct for us here? All right, so I'm gonna take Kathy and then Matt.
Well, I don't know. Here's a stab, and it's something I've been thinking about. It's just that I feel like, the bigger context is Korra. I mean, that's where we are. And so that in a way, this all gets back to the original question of Korra. That is Moses's authority. That's what that all was about. And so that it's kind of like building up Moses and to answer Korah to begin with. And so I think that's kind of what Elizabeth was saying too, that the circular nature of this is really quite striking. And it is kind of amazing that he uses two completely different, or Rashi uses two completely different paths, but that's what it gets back to, is how great Moses is. So
that's good. That's right. That's really, really, really sharp. Remember that the Korach story began, let's take a look at it here. The Korach story began with a direct challenge to Moses's authority, and Moses's authority as some kind of special magic messenger of God. Here, let's take a look here at the beginning of Parshat Korach, Numbers chapter. There we go. The Korach comes to rise up against Moses, and they said, "You've gone too far. For all the community are holy, all of them. Koleda kulam kadoshim, and the Lord is in their midst. Why do you raise yourselves above the Lord's congregation?" So in other words, there's some question at the very heart of this story about whether Moses is somehow taking on too much, representing too much. It is kind of weird that he killed his adversary. And now but then on the other hand, he's our defender. So is Moses with us or against us? That's the whole question here. Is Moses the correct bearer of God's truth? And this Rashi, it has Aaron dragging the angel of death to the door, but part of what it proves, Kathy reminds us, is that Aaron is saying God and Moses are a unit here. There's no just as Korach suggested, God is great, but who are you? No, Moses is the representative. And Moses is more the representative of God than any silly angel, even the angel of death. All right? Okay, so that's a great reading. Thank you. Matt?
I think there's a bigger problem here, not with Korach. The problem is with God. God orders the killing and then allows it to stop. And what Rashi is doing by taking those things and bringing them into the angel of death is it allows us to deal with and discuss the contradiction that we just saw in God. It's not a question of Moses's authority. It's a question of what is God doing? And we can't say God's wrong, so we talk about the angel.
Exactly right. I think that's exactly right. And it builds on Hannah's very, very, very incisive comment earlier. That's right. There is at the very heart of this, some question about how is it that God is the force of death and the force of healing? And in this story, it's like God is a gruesome force of death, right? And how God comes, let's take a look at it. I mean, actually, I think I lopped us off a little early because I wanted to leave us with remember at the beginning here, I said, and the last line is, he stood between the dead and the living until the plague was checked. But actually, let's take a look at the next line. He stood between the dead and the living until the plague was checked. Those who died of the plague came to 14,700. What? God just killed 14,000 people in the desert? And on the one hand, as Matt says, I mean, we're in this story and God's this consuming force and better watch out. The story has its own logic and God does whatever God wants. And we know God gets angry and we have our various explanations. We don't really believe God is like that, or do we? That makes us a little uncomfortable. But within the story, there's a problem. Because how is it that Moses, the agent of God, is able to stop something that God is doing? Which one of those is God? And this is a core Jewish theological question. Is God chesed or is God din? Is God mercy or is God justice? Is God life or is God death? Which one? Because when death comes, when I was at this Shiva this morning, we wonder, how could God let this be? How could God let this happen? Is there a God? I just lose my parent? Is there a God? And and then more, and then this event, and then this mass calamity, and this mass. How can God let these things happen? And so Hannah and Matt tell us we're putting this question into the figure of the angel of death. And we're imagining, oh, first of all, it's not really God, it's the angel of death. That's a way of taking the responsibility off God. But then we even think, well, with the angel of death is conflicted. Angel of death doesn't want to do it. Nobody wants this to happen. Nobody wants to see this side of the divine, but it's there, it exists, it's part of the great cosmic reality. So we have to figure out, how do we make sense of this? And the way that Rashi makes sense of it is to create an angel of death who's coming to kill you, who's coming to deliver God's wrath, but has given you the cure ahead of time, right? Wants you to survive. I got to do what I got to do. I'm on a mission from God, right? As the Blues Brothers said. But I don't really want this to happen. So here's a cure. And at the moment of Moses' glory, when Moses shows how beautiful human beings are, how great they are, who would want human beings to come into the world with all this beauty and glory and then just pass away? Can't they live forever like angels? Right? These are some of the questions that I think this kind of folksy figure of the angel of death is meant to psychologically help Rashi grapple with. So, good work. We'll leave it there today. Thanks, everybody.